Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
We're here. Welcome to Set Phasers,
We did it.
the premiere episode.
It's happening.
It is happening.
I just want to say it finally happened.
Yep. After what, 2 years?
2 years. We were like, oh, we should do a podcast about Star Trek. We should do, yeah. Now we're doing it.
Yep. Thank you,
Kinda
pandemic.
like that. Yes, thank you. Well, yeah. Thank you, India. We did not plan to do that.
No.
Okay, well, what's up? I'm Akie Burmese,
And I'm Steph Mans.
and you are listening and watching right now Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
So if you are watching live on Facebook, this will be a podcast that is also an audio podcast, which you can listen to after the fact every single Monday.
Or anytime thereafter. You can download it Monday and listen to it Wednesday if you
That's
want.
true. You can do whatever you like.
Yeah, we won't stop you.
We don't prescribe when you need to listen to the show.
Yeah, there's no proscription against listening to it at any given time.
So Akie, let's tell the people, what is Set Phasers all about?
Set Phasers. Okay, you're here with us. Set Phasers is about Steph and I. We love Star Trek. We sometimes sit down and watch some Star Trek and then text back and forth. And we're like, oh, can you believe this is happening?
Yeah.
And we love the new Star Trek franchise, Star Trek Discovery,
Yep.
which is has completed 2 seasons, but possibly a third is coming at some point next year or the later this year. No one really knows because they finished filming right before everything shut down. But we thought it would be cool to do a podcast where we go back through all the episodes of season 1 and season 2. And then when season 3 comes out, we'll just do a watch. We're
An after
watching the
show.
show.
Yeah.
We're doing an after show. So that's what Set Phasers is. It's highly illogical. It's just how we feel, how much we love Star Trek.
What a wonderful way to introduce the show, Akie. Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you.
job. All
I
right.
told people I could talk about Star Trek all the time. So should we get into
Should we do the rundown? Do you want
I
to
think
do
it's
the
time to
recap?
run it. I think it's time to run it down. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, well, that makes me so happy.
It's time to run it down. Can you run it down for me? What just happened? Can you run it down for me?
So much joy.
Wow, it's just it's a great deal of something. Someone was very enthusiastic when recording that. All right, so today we are talking about the pilot episode, season 1, episode 1 of Star Trek Discovery, entitled "The Vulcan Hello."
Mm-hmm.
Yes, everything begins here.
And it's such a great prelude.
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, it's so wonderful and rich, and yet you don't really know how rich and wonderful it will turn out to be in the end. There's so much foreshadowing and little Easter eggs that are kind of being dropped in here in this first episode. But let's just get into it.
Let's do it.
So we begin with like a black screen, and we hear a voice speaking in Klingon. And then there's captions at the bottom that are like in the Klingon alphabet, and then they change. And we're listening to a speech by Klingon. The blackness of the field of space turns into like a Klingon's, like the landscape of their face very close up. And we're listening to this Klingon.
What we learn is
Yes.
Klingons, because this is sort of a new interpretation of Klingons.
Oh, that's right. I had a friend who started this week who was like, so the Klingons, what's going on?
They're bold. What's happened?
Because this is like the third Klingon makeover in the franchise. But I remember when I first saw it, I was like, well, these are the Klingons. Oh, all right, cool. They're a little more Klingon-y. It's not your daddy's Worf.
No.
But nonetheless, we hear like a very long sort of inspiring speech by a Klingon about the dangers of, it's like a very, I don't want to get political, but it's a very sort of like, don't let the outsiders come in here and ruin our Klingon culture. We need to unite the 24 broken houses and clans of the Klingon Empire and stay away from those whose, I think the final words are like, whose destruction comes with the words, we come in peace.
And then it cuts.
Smash cut to a big desert. It's like a broad desert expanse, and we see two tiny figures walking along the desert. And we hear one character say, we come in peace. Isn't that what Starfleet is all about? Yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
Come to find out, we are watching Michael Burnham, Commander Michael Burnham, and her captain, Giorgio, Captain Giorgio, Philippa Giorgio.
Played by Michelle Yeoh.
Yes, played by Michelle. Played wonderfully by Michelle Yeoh. Walking along the sands on some sort of mission where they've been dropped onto this planet that some sort of meteor went by and drained it of its water or something and heated it up. And so they need to go there, but they need to, and they didn't call it the Prime Directive, but I did write it down this time, what it is called, General Order 1. That they not be, seen interfering with the locals. So they try to like walk incognito through this crevasse. They come to a well. They're having all this sort of like wonderful, it's like a French film, like, the French Assassins film or like a Pulp Fiction. They're just having like a weird conversation where you're like, why are these people talking like this?
But that little kind of General Directive number 1 is sort of a little nod to Trek fans to say, well, we haven't gotten to the creation of the Prime Directive yet.
We haven't gotten to the Prime Directive quite. But they're trying to help this planet. And they go, and there's a storm coming, and Philippa says to Michael, how soon do you think that storm's going to get here? And she turns around and looks at it and says, 1 hour, 17 minutes, and 22 seconds, which is ridiculous.
True Vulcan style.
Yeah, well, we don't know that she's Vulcan raised at that time.
Indeed.
I guess that's sort of like a clue that it's a little specific for a human. So they managed to get the well open with some targeted phaser pulse blasting out of a phaser rifle. And are you about to... There it is.
There it goes.
Yeah, we have sound effects, guys. It's not... We have a little bit of sound effects.
We've got 2 musicians. We've created a lot of things.
Yeah, we've created... It's mostly sound. You can just... If you're watching, you should probably just close your eyes. Just sit back, close your eyes, and imagine what it looks like when we say things.
Experience the sound bath.
Ooh, a sound bath. That's nice. That's a very nice way to put it. Okay. So just for those who are unfamiliar, what happens is I talk and talk and talk and talk, and Steph interrupts me with important things. So I'm doing that. That's why it's happening this way. So it turns out the storm is much closer than Michael thought. Ha, ha, ha. And now they're sort of stuck, possibly, because they can't get a recorder lock. They can't get beamed up. And Georgia looks at Michael, and she says, follow me, Michael. And we have more sort of interesting conversation in which a salient point is Georgia says, you've been serving me for however many years, and I think it's time for you to have your own command. And yes, our Michael Burnham is taken aback at this moment.
And we're just sort of shown this relationship of trust and like number one, like, she calls her number one. It sets this whole sort of scene up of like this real trusted relationship between a captain and her number one.
A mentor and a mentee for sure,
yes,
right? Shaping. Telling her like, I think it's time we talked about you having your own command. Anyway, it was so wonderful. And then at one point, sort of like a narrative foreshadowing as they're walking, Georgie says, follow my footsteps directly, Michael. And so anyway, they wind up walking and talking, and Michael thinks that they're lost the whole time. And then they come across their own footprints, and she goes, oh no, you led us back in our footprints. We're totally lost. You led us in a circle. And Georgie says, not quite a circle. And then fa, 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 fa. Yes, a ship comes down out of the roiling clouds. It is a beautiful starship. This is crucial for any Star Trek pilot. You've got to have that moment where the ship first shows up. You got to have the fanfare. It's just gorgeous. It's wonderful.
And we're kind of at this point not sure, is this Discovery?
Yes, we think it must be the name of the ship.
Right.
It's, and we find out that it's not actually. I think we find out right around then that it's actually called the Shenzhou.
Yes.
So we don't know what Discovery means at this point in the show, but they are beamed up, and then as the shot pulls away, you see that Georgie led them.
Did you say they were beamed up?
They were beamed up,
Small things.
No, listen, this is important.
Listen, you have the rundown. I have the sound effects.
You have the command center over there. Yeah, no, I know. I can't even imagine what it looks like over there.
I'm at the con.
You're at the con. Yeah, and as we pull back, we see that Giorgio had them walk in like the shape of a Starfleet communicator badge emblem. So that's just, it's so touching. It's like if you haven't seen Star Trek since Enterprise went off the air and you've only been watching reruns and now this new show's happening and it's like Klingons and like she calls her number one at one point. Anyway, I get a little verklempt just thinking about it. That was, so then we go to I'm sorry. I'm getting verklempt right now.
It's good use of the word. I don't think I've ever used that word.
Thank you. Well, sparingly, but twice in the last 10 seconds. We go to the credit sequence and we get to hear the new Discovery, the theme.
Yes.
Which is pretty great. That's also for those of us who lived through the Enterprise days and that wonderful, wonderful theme song, Faith of the Heart.
Does it sound a little like this? A little bit.
It did sound like this.
I was...
Oh, this honestly sounds like a little bit tougher than the version that was on Enterprise. But we get it's got horns, it's got strings. Anyway, the graphics are great. We could have a whole episode where we just talk about how great the credit sequence is.
We could do a whole episode on the music.
We could do a whole.
That's a nerdy music thing.
Well, maybe if we finish all the episodes and we're still waiting for season 3,
that's true. Bonus content. Look out for it, people.
Look out for bonus content. Okay, so we come back. We get, you know what? I never said the star date for our show because I got so excited, but it doesn't matter. I can get to it at the end. We get Commander's, like First Mate's log. It's Michael Burnham saying that they're showing up to fix this messed up communications array. They can't determine if it's natural or if it's a deliberate thing. And so there's like a robot working on a thing, but they also are looking at this weird sort of binary star system where gravitational stuff is all out of whack. And they spot some sort of strange anomaly within the system, but because of the interference, because of the radiation of the two stars rotating around each other, they can't really get a good look at it. So they're wondering if they should just leave it alone or if they should try to go look at it, but they don't have a ship small enough, like a shuttle that can deal with it. And Michael says, I'll go. And this is where we get to, see how much of a sort of a badass Michael is. And we also meet Michael's counterpart on the crew, Saru.
Played by Doug Jones.
Played by Doug Jones. Every time you say Doug Jones, you say it's played by somebody, I always go play wonderfully by so.
Played wonderfully by Doug Jones.
Played by Doug Jones.
But I didn't by
Doug Jones. Yeah.
Until I saw Doug Jones in Discovery, I didn't realize how much Doug Jones had done.
Yeah.
Like Doug Jones is in so many things, but often not visibly as himself.
Right. And he's not visible here as himself either.
No.
Yeah. He is.
But he's a very tall gentleman.
He is tall. But I think they also put him in the like reverse platforms nonetheless, right?
That's right, they did.
So he's like extra taller than everyone.
Super tall.
But he's a timid, I forgot to write down the name of the race that he is. But he, for everything that...
Kelpian.
Yes, he's Kelpian. Well done. See?
Thank you.
Yeah. You have to interrupt at the right times.
That's why I'm here. I have a job.
Michael is adventurous and she's a risk taker, but she's also a very logical Vulcan trained mind, which we learn later. Saru is cautious and empathetic and careful, and they squabble like siblings in front of their captain about basically everything.
Yep. Such a sibling relationship of who's trying to win the love.
Mm-hmm. Who wants to get the most approval? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after arguing, Saru's like, we can't go. We should leave it alone. It's too dangerous. And Michael says, we have to go. Otherwise, why come all this way? Giorgio stands up and says, you're both right. And Michael says, I'll go. Just put me in like a jumpsuit and I'll fly out there. And then Saru says, you'll die. Your DNA will come apart like noodles after 20 minutes. To which Michael says, I'll be back in 19. Which is, I don't know, I liked it.
I love that moment. It was great.
That's like I didn't know how to talk about this, but when they agree to that, we get what I consider to be one of the most iconic images from the first season. One of the most iconic sequences is Michael in the spacesuit flying into the binary star system to find, and it's gorgeous. I actually, just in preparation for today, wrote down that it starts around 14 minutes and 25 seconds into the episode. So if you're watching on CBS All Access, or if you want to go back and relive it, it's still gorgeous. I've seen it 4 or 5 times, and every time I watch it, I'm still like, this is beautiful.
It is.
It's the acting and the special effects and the music and the story. In any case, Michael flies into the weird radiation storm, and they are tracking her vitals, and her heart rate is accelerated, and they're having trouble, and they have to boost the signal, and then eventually they lose her signal altogether, and she finds this beautiful, strange ship floating and rotating in space, and she sees things on it that could be anything, and she decides to move in close. It's supposed to just be a flyby, and she lands on the deck of it, and it's this strange alien artifact floating in space, and she's looking. Does she hear something behind her?
I think so, because she kind of lands and just like,
yeah, she like lands, she's looking, she's like recording real Will Robinson style. And then I think she hears something behind her. She turns around to see this figure, a humanoid figure in this
Armored
huge, like
figure.
Armored, full facial covering suit.
And at this point, we don't know what it is. We don't know that it's a person inside.
Yeah.
Or a humanoid.
We have no idea. You could assume it was Klingon, but you wouldn't assume it was a Klingon.
No.
You know, like it was Klingon technology.
Yes.
Because of the cold open. But it attacks her, and then her suit helps her attack it, and she like shoves its blade into itself.
Because she says something that's like Federation-ish, and it's like, trigger.
It's like, we come in peace. Forget that. That's how you kill us. Never forget what Takuma says. Klingon mach ta jash. Remain Klingon.
Indeed.
Yeah, I wrote it down. And I practiced it.
Good for you.
Practiced it in the mirror.
I'm not good at Klingon. It's not,
Neither am I, but I apparently don't have better things to do than to practice Klingon phrases. So then we get a cut. We cut away, and we don't know exactly what's happened to Michael there.
No, we do know, because we hang on. I think you missed a bit. So they kind of get into some sort of like embrace type thing where you sort of see a blade go through this armor.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just meant after that we don't know who killed who.
You're
what's
right.
We're just like action suddenly, right? And then we cut to back to the Klingons, and the Klingon leader Takuma. I think we learn that his name is Takuma at that point, is giving a funeral for a fallen soldier. I think we put together. I don't know, because now that I'm watching in retrospect,
it's the torchbearer, so it's the guy that just died.
But we didn't necessarily know that was a torchbearer at that moment,
right?
Anyway, he's eulogizing the torchbearer. At first, I always thought it was sort of a throwaway scene, except that it was so cool. Like he's laying in the coffin, and then they open his eyes before they bury him, and then the ship goes out, and apparently they keep their dead in like airtight containers on the hull of their ship, that's
new.
Oh, whoa. That was pretty sweet. There's a pretty great speech there, which I think that I wrote down, but maybe we'll save that for later. And they do the Klingon, the death cry, which is a great shout out to TNG. They do the as the soldier goes up. And that is the end of that scene. Then we switch back to Michael, and it's a flashback. Ooh. And
we need some flashback next time.
I don't think I plugged my keyboard in. And it's Michael in one of those Vulcan like test spheres. And it's like a young Michael. She's got to be 10, 11 or something like that. Maybe even younger. Same.
Like having her sort of Vulcan SATs.
It's Vulcan SATs, which we've seen in like other Star Trek movies. It's usually a Spock dealing with some sort of, and it's like a barrage of questions from a holographic wall. And she's kind of just nailing it. She's doing all the blah, 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 blah. But then they ask her about a particular Klingon massacre that happened at a particular like star observatory. And she kind of freezes up, and then it asks it again and says that her question time was insufficient. And then she starts crying, and then eventually the program shuts off, and we see above her an adult Vulcan whom she addresses as Sarek. Oh, now to all Star Trek fans out there who've watched the original series, TNG, the movies, we all know Spock's father.
We do.
And his name is Sarek. It's Ambassador Sarek. I mean, come on. This was great. We're going like, what Why is she talking to Sarek, who's like speaking to her almost as a father figure, and she's apologizing for letting her emotions get the better of her. So this is where we find out that she was sort of raised as a Vulcan and is trying to adhere to pure logic. And
We don't know why she was raised as a Vulcan.
We don't quite know why. Yes. But there's a wonderful heartbreaking moment where she apologizes and says, maybe I should, brush up my Vulcan so I can give the answers in Vulcan because my human tongue is too slow. And Sarek says with, just passionate Vulcan expression, your human tongue is not the problem. It's your human heart. And then cut to grown Michael inside some sort of DNA repair tube. She's got scars all over her body, but she wakes up. Radiation, because her DNA was coming apart like noodles.
Yes.
And she's clearly maybe like a third of the way through this restorative process. But she wakes up and she goes, Klingons, someone's got to warn. Yeah, so she pulls the full, and I've said this before, this is like such a James T. Kirk move. She just pops the thing open, rips the things off. The doctor's like, don't you know what could happen? You're sick. She's like, I got to get to the bridge. Throws on a robe and goes to the bridge barefoot in a robe.
Is it even a robe? It looked like a sheet.
In hindsight, I think it was a robe. I think it had a little tie, but it does look like just like a bed sheet. Yeah. And she's just, open wounds on her face, disheveled, the sclera thing in her eye, just looking horrible from death's door. And she shows up and she's like, there were Klingons out there. We got to do something. And they go, Klingons, because they hadn't seen the footage from her suit. And this is the part Steph loves, because I have to say that Michael says, you want me to do it just right away? No one has seen Klingons in over 100 years.
How long?
Over 100 years.
Love it.
100 years. It's also fun for me. Sometimes when I'm by myself and not recording, I just turn the mic on and say that to myself.
Do you go into the bathroom and just do it off the walls?
I go, Klingon Makta Jash, 100 years. That's what I do for fun. That's how my pandemic is going. So they're like, what? And she's like, seriously, you got to do something about it. And no one really believes her. And I guess it's once again an argument between Saru and Michael, and it's about trying to get the captain to go with their idea. Saru, of course, begs caution: "Don't do anything. Let's just get out of here. You should be back in sickbay." Michael says, "There's something we gotta." And so, drawing on her knowledge of Klingons, she says, "Let's aim the ship's weapons at that object." And Saru says, "You're not going to start a war by firing, And she goes, "I'm not saying anything about firing." And then Georgiou catches on and she says, "Oh, yeah, we'll make them think we're firing." And they do that. And guess what? A big old Klingon ship decloaks right in front of them. Da, 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 da. I don't have a song for that. So
a big Klingon warbird.
Yeah. These are the most annoying aspects of my personality, being given free reign on this podcast. But it's too late now.
You're right. I'm in it for the long haul now.
You've really set yourself up for at least 2 seasons worth of me talking about and being excited about Star Trek.
I don't think I've ever seen you this excited. I don't know what happened between last week and this week.
My heart is racing. Well, you got to get it up there for the live show. You got to do it. You got to do it real. This is our first real rundown. Okay, so we cut now back to the Klingon vessel, and T'Kuvma's got all the assembled his disciples. And he says, okay, who will be the next torchbearer? Who is the brother of this man? And some timid guy's like, oh, well, I'm like his brother, I guess. And T'Kuvma's like, what's up? You're going to be the next torchbearer? And he's like, with respect, how do we know the turning on the light of Kahless is going to bring these people? It's basically a myth. And T'Kuvma gets in his face and he's like, oh, you doubt? Well, you dishonor only yourself. And then we hear a voice from the throng say, I will be the next torchbearer. And the people part. And we see an albino Klingon step forward, which T'Kuvma describes. He says, you have no family sword. You are not from a great noble house. You are not worthy to be the torchbearer. And this Klingon, whom we later come to know as Vulc, walks up and he says, I am...
Klingon sounds so much like Arabic, this the way it's done in this series. And I'm like, there's just so much kind of guttural sounds going on.
Well, there's the glottal stop for sure in a bunch of this stuff. But
yeah,
it's also got a sing-songy, I don't know what I would call it, not quite Danish or something, but it's a mixture of those Arabic syllables, which I studied in college. And this, go, cook it, go, like a tonal aspect to it. I guess more like I'm thinking like Mandarin or something.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Mm-hmm.
I want to take a moment just to say that the actors doing the Klingon in this series do a wonderful job of speaking the language without it sounding,
Yeah.
cartoonish. It's pretty great.
And it's just, looking at Trek lore and the series, I remember watching this and going, oh, they're speaking Klingon with subtitles. It's not like they've, we have a universal translator and the Klingons are speaking English and they're sort of doing it with a bit of a Klingon accent.
They're like, listen up, except every once in a while they call them up to talk or something.
Right. Or say kapla, anything like that.
Yes. Well, in any case, this Vulc walks up and he says, I am not worthy by blood, but by faith. And then he puts his hands in the flames of the ship and he says, the flames of Kalis will prove me worthy. And he just leaves him there as his hand is cooking and they all stare. And then eventually Takuma comes over and says, you are worthy. You will be the torchbearer. And then he gives him his weapon, his sword, I assume those are supposed to be batleths.
I think so. It's a big batleth.
Anyway, I love them. They look great. They're like so awesome. I miss the batleths from TNG, but these are pretty sweet. These look like really deadly.
They did look like a sort of big bow and arrow type thing. It was just a big one, yeah.
More like it have reach, whereas the batleths in TNG are fun. They look like fun. They look like American Gladiator weapons or something.
Yes, which was
Totally,
obviously going on at the time, yeah.
Which was going on at the time. See how we delve into the anthropology of the moment.
Yeah.
This is TNG, this is the 80s. This is now. Okay, so he says, great. He gives him the weapon. He says, you will be the torchbearer. Light the light of Kalis. So we go back now to the Shenzhou. See what I almost did there? We learn Saru gives a sort of speech about like the difference between him and Michael as they're dealing with this, like, these are Klingons, what should we do? Giorgio has told them to like contact Starfleet and tell them that they have made contact with Klingons and should we go? And Saru explains that the Kelpians, there's no food chain on their planet. It's a binary culture. They were bred by the other race on the other intelligent race on their planet to be hunted and eat. And their evolutionary apex for Kelpians is to sense, he calls it, the coming of death. And then he looks at Michael and says, I sense it now.
Yeah. Ominous.
Pretty cool. Anyway, Doug Jones, you got my vote, buddy.
Billy Butcherson in Hocus Pocus, by the way.
Yes, totally. Yeah. Yes, I got.
Probably one of the only times you've seen him as like with his own face.
I saw an interview with him and I was like, Doug Jones. So now we get into like where things get a little complex and weird. So there's a meeting that an admiral with Giorgio and Michael walks into it, and the admiral says, do nothing. Wait till our ships get there. And Michael's sort of advocating that they have to do something. They have to make a more aggressive posture because these are Klingons.
So we see this stand down of like the Klingons and Starfleet, and they've not seen each other for how long?
100 years.
Excellent. And Philippa Giorgio has to decide what is the best way to avoid starting a war. She has these two options. She has Saru who's saying, let's get out of here. And you've got Michael who's like, no, we need to fire weapons. And it'll...
Yeah, this is the only way we make sure that they don't attack us. And at that moment, after the argument that Michael has sort of with the Admiral and Giorgio, the light of Kalis turns on. A blinding light emanates from the artifact, and it just like overwhelms all the sensors. We get a red alert, our only red alert of the episode.
Found it.
There it is. Red alert. You found it. And yes. So now they've got this blinding light coming in through the view screen, and they don't know exactly what's going on, and things are getting crazy. And Michael asks to be excused from the bridge. She runs back to her room, and she places a call to a certain Sarek.
Yeah, she has a wee FaceTime with adopted father Sarek.
That's right, with adopted father Sarek, who's also the father of Spock. When is this taking place? Where's Spock in all this? So weird. Anyway, so he might be. He could be. Doing the whatever. I was gonna say the Gum Jabbar, but that's from Dune. Pionfar? Nope. That's like the Vulcan puberty. I can't remember what the thing is where you do the ritual to have perfect logic.
Kolinar?
It is Kolinar.
Oh,
You
I'm
know,
2 for 2.
Between the two of us, we know everything about Star Trek.
Yeah. Oh, I'm such a nerd. Yay.
No, that was great. Thank you for picking up the pieces.
You're welcome.
Anyway, so and I remember watching this and being like, where's Buck right now? Anyway, Sarek and Michael have a discussion. He tells her not to get emotional. She says, I'm not emotional, but we kind of know that like this is when we get to experience Michael's sort of like this conflict that's going on internally inside of her, where it's this Vulcan control over one's emotions and thoughts in order to, retain logic under stressful situations, meeting with an extremely traumatic, hinted at like past trauma and an emotional human psyche, which is trying to break free of these controls. And so she starts to have this battle of wills, but it's really her own wills battling back and forth. And it makes Michael a very compelling character because her conflict is writ within her. That's already a conflict in the series, is that this character is complicated and trying to do the right thing. So it's not the perfect logic of a Spock versus the cowboy playing poker isms of a Kirk. It's that in one person, and it's Michael. Anyway, I don't want to go all crazy about it, but I will write an essay or something.
You can do a blog.
I mean, who's to say I don't have a secret blog? Or 2 or 3. She asked Sarek, hey, how did you guys achieve peace with the Klingons? And Sarek says, okay, well, as soon as we saw them, we fired on them. And then the next time we saw them, we fired on them. And then eventually they decided they wanted to talk to us. And what he says is that with violence came respect, and respect brought peace. And he says they called it this thing of like, as soon as you see them without trying to raise them or hail them or any frequencies, just firing on them, he called it the Vulcan Hello, which is where we get the name for this episode. Anyway, Michael decides, okay, we got a Vulcan Hello. So she goes running back to the bridge. She says, I got to talk to you, Giorgio. They go into the room. She says, we have to do this thing. They go into Giorgio's ready room. You got to do this thing. We have to fire on them. I'm telling you, this is the only way to do it. Giorgio says, that's not what we do. That's not Starfleet. We're not going to fire first. We're not going to start a war out here. And Michael says, we have to. Giorgio says, you can't let your emotions, again, hinting at some past trauma involving Klingons. We don't know exactly what it is.
And in the meantime, the Klingons have lit this beacon to say to all other Klingons, come now.
All 24 houses. Now, if you believe in the Torchbearer's actual brother, maybe they won't come because it's just a myth. But if you believe in T'Kuvma and Volk, then all Klingons must come to the call when the light of Kahless is lit. So we really don't know, like no one, like the Klingons don't know if their people are coming. T'Kuvma and Volk have faith, but everyone, they're like, this could be the beginning of something. I don't know. Got to unite the 24 houses. And the Starfleet has no idea what's going on at this point, but they're like sort of sitting, they're waiting, and they're trying to do the diplomatic thing. And Michael says like, we should have fired on them. Giorgio basically shuts her down, says you can't do it. Michael pretends to understand, and then betrayal of betrayals, the fall from grace, the greatest crime. She hits her with the Vulcan neck pinch and knocks her out.
This Captain Number One Bond.
Yeah, her own captain, the one with which she had such great rapport. Which, I mean, when we discussed earlier, like the idea of Vulcan and Vulcant moments, I don't know what that fits under.
Can you pick one?
I'm going to go with I Vulcan.
I Vulcan.
Yeah. I think she chose to go with logic, even if it was ruthless, because she thought she was doing something logical. But in actuality, I think a lot of her reaction is based on her human emotion, her fear of the, like, well, I don't want to spoil anything. So
you don't want to spoil anything. You sure?
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
she goes back out onto the bridge and she says, okay, hey, it's me, the number one. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to fire on that vessel. And they're all like, what, who, what? And she goes, no, you got to fire on that vessel. Fire. And Saru is sort of like, where's the captain? I don't think we should do that. And Michael's doing everything to sort of cover up this mutiny and just have it happen. I guess she's decided she would rather make this move, and I think she thinks she's protecting the Federation, and she'll just throw her career out the window. I mean, that's what she's signing up for in this moment. You know, she's just trying to get the shot off. She's not really trying to take over the ship.
You can mute yourself. I'll figure something out.
And just as here comes the fire truck. And just as a fire truck came by,
I thought we could have one of these little moments where we paid tribute to the fallen Klingon, whose name I have completely forgotten. But Akie has so very kindly written so much, well, not written, composed much of the music and the arrangements for our shows. And you may recognize this, Of the Heart.
may I just say while this music is playing to our fallen torchbearer, Klingon, Mach, Tach, Shush.
Indeed.
Wow.
That was some improvisation, if I do say so myself.
Hey, I live close to a hospital. It's bound to happen. I didn't think it would be on our inaugural maiden voyage first show, but sometimes like 14 ambulances will drive by.
It'll be edited out of the audio episode.
It will be. For those of you watching live, you get to see how the sausage is made. Anyway, just as they're about to fire, Giorgio comes out, staggering out of the room, and she's holding a phaser. She has said her phaser, let me tell you what. And she's holding it on Michael, and she says, belay that order. And then now the mutiny is revealed. And just as they're about to sort of face off on the ship, the light of Kalis goes out, and a bunch of ships suddenly are picked up on the scanners. And Giorgio says, are they Starfleet?
They all come out of warp.
They all come out of warp?
Yep.
But they're not Starfleet.
No.
They're all Klingon.
All Klingon.
Klingon, Mach, Tach, Josh. So that's the end. That's the end of episode 1. Yeah. It was like, internal, external, and cosmic conflicts abound. There's no solid ground here.
So we've had the rundown. So I think it's time to set phasers.
Set phasers to stats.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So what stats do we have?
Normally we would have a ton of stats, but this is episode 1, so there's not a lot of stats.
We barely even see like our primary characters in this episode.
Yeah, we only see Saru, Burnham, Giorgio. We get glimpses of other people. We haven't met the Doctor yet.
We get a couple of the Klingons. We do get Vogue.
We get Vogue.
And L'Rell.
And L'Rell. Briefly, we get L'Rell. Yeah, we don't. Spoiler alert.
Oh no!
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
There's one she doesn't really say on screen, but they have they do the whole on screen enhance thing to try and see the anomaly. They never really set phasers, but when she asked Michael what she needs to set the phaser to in order to break through the ground in the opening sequence where they save the well, Michael tells her it needs to be set to 13.5.
Which is a new one. It's not like set phasers to
she's like 13.5 at pulse power or whatever.
Blast.
And
we had one red alert.
Red alert.
We had the one. That's all we got.
We had one red alert. No, you're totally right. I decided to, I glanced over it. I apologize. So those are really the stats. We have some other stats that we know will become relevant down the line, but we won't give that away just yet.
All right. So Akie, I think the next thing that we do is quotable moments.
Wow, who's that excitable person saying quotable moments?
Quotable. I think it's my mom.
Yeah, it must be your.
I channeled my mom.
You channeled your mom, and as I said, the teapot from Beauty and the Beast, Angela Lansbury herself. Okay, so there's only a couple quotes from here that I really liked. I loved Sarek saying, "It's not your human tongue that is the problem; it's your human heart." I loved Takuma saying, "So you doubt yourself, you only dishonor yourself." And I very much love the speech that he gives as he is the sort of the eulogy to the first torchbearer. He says, "Our ancestors welcome our fallen brother to their black fleet. They fight with us as we fight against our enemy," which, hey, that sounds pretty good in English, but in Klingon, oh my, it is superb.
If you can quote an entire thing in Klingon for the next episode, I will send you dinner.
I mean,
because of course that's how we have to do things these days.
if you can quote, I will send you dinner.
That's all I can do.
That's all. That is truly all we can do.
I have to say, my favorite moment, or my quotable moment, was with the high levels of radiation kicking off in the binaries. She'll have 20 minutes before her DNA starts to unravel like noodles.
That's
I love
fantastic.
That's
classic.
Yeah.
Star Trek. It's perfectly hyperbolic. Also gives you a little sciencey stuff, but it gives you a sense of the danger. And you get to experience this like, oh, okay, this is kind of dangerous. And of course, Michael just coolly coming back and saying, like noodles, I'll be back in 19. I mean, that is badassery.
Class.
Well,
absolute class.
Should we
class and badass
wrap it up? Is it wrap up time?
I believe it is wrap up time. My favorite thing to ask you, Akie, is what is coming up?
Next time on Set Phasers. Well, next time on Set Phasers, we'll be getting into season 1, episode 2 of Star Trek Discovery, which the title kind of gives it away, is called Battle at the Binary Stars. So
it sounds like, like Battle of the something. Like we know that we feel like this is going to be Star Trek lore.
This is huge. And I guess we know that now we'll see the repercussions of the mutiny and the Klingons showing up, and will the Federation get there in time? And what else is going to happen? This is only episode 2. I mean, come on. Goodness gracious. Anyway, thank you all, anyone who's out there watching and anyone who is listening right now after the fact. Thank you to all our people who have supported us already on Patreon. If you enjoy the program, you can catch us every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook Live, or as a podcast every Monday, wherever podcasts come from. Please subscribe.
We are on Facebook and Instagram at Set Phasers Podcasts. Feel free to follow us and join the conversation of all things Trek. And by all means, please give us a piece of your mind.
Yes. And if you want to support us on our continuing mission to discover what Discovery has in store for us, we'd only be delighted. You can patronize us. We can take it by going to patreon.com/setphasers. I hate that joke and I love it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, until next time, I'm Stephanie Manns, and this has been Set Phasers.
And I'm Akie Burmese, and I guess I'm fighting for my life in the mirror universe.
Computer. End program.